50 years later, I'm back to do what I always swore I'd do, and that is to stand on the high ground and plant the American flag in North Vietnam. Those peoples are much like, I equate them to the American Indian, or perhaps to the Aborigines of Australia. They're a people that are unto themselves, their own society, their own mores, and they live life the way they choose to live. It's different than us. Doesn't mean it's any better or any worse. It's just different. And so they formed these tribes that moved into the central highlands of Vietnam, and they had the Rades, which were the aristocrats society. They had the Jurais that were the warriors. They had the Manongs that were the farmers and the tradespeople. And so they had their own society that developed, and they operated totally separate from the Vietnamese, and they had serious clashes with the Vietnamese. At one point they had gotten, with outside help, to the point that they built a university just for Montagnards here in Buon Ma Thuot. And the Vietnamese army came in and destroyed that university and burnt all the books, and much was lost to the world about the history of the Montagnards when that happened, because there had been people here doing work on that over a period of time. And so as we came in, the American military, and particularly special operations or special forces, we began to work with the Montagnards, because they were the ones that knew the terrain the best of the areas that we were most concerned with, the border areas of Vietnam. And we began to support them. We found out that they had a secret army of their own called Phu Ro, and Phu Ro was manned and maintained strictly by the Montagnards. The Vietnamese were very against it, so it was a very secret and quiet society. And so we began to support them, and we provided them with arms and ammunition and claymore mines to protect their villages, basically for self-defense of the Montagnard people. And because of that, we formed a lasting and trusting friendship and a working relationship with them, where they supported us in the efforts that we were trying to do here to support the military efforts of America in Southeast Asia. Because we didn't judge them. And I think that was the key. The Vietnamese, be they north, south, or wherever, they would judge them. They called them children. And as a Montagnard, to be called a child, they love children, but for a man to be called a child is great disrespect. We came in an accepting mode, because that's what we do. We come in and we work with people, and we understand that they're not going to be just like us. They're going to be different. They're going to have their own religion. They're going to have their own society. And we accept that and learn to work with it, as opposed to trying to destroy it or change it. Our mission was to conduct cross-border reconnaissance operations in Cambodia, Laos, and North Vietnam, so that the Americans would know what was coming towards them, because the Ho Chi Minh Trail ran through those areas. And so they would move large quantities of people and equipment down those trails, and if we were there watching the trails and watching the unit movements, we could then tell the commanders in Vietnam, and they could position forces to counter those enemy that were coming down the trail. And so for us to get to those locations and to get there efficiently, quietly, and effectively, we got the Montagnards to work with us and on these small reconnaissance operation of 2 Americans and 4 Montagnards, 6-man teams, to go into those areas. And they're the ones that we were inserted by helicopter, but then they got us to the actual point of the mission. One of the things that always struck me was when I came here on my first tour, I knew I was here for 12 months, because a tour here was 12 months. These guys' tour was a lifetime tour. And so I knew that I could learn a lot from them. But at the same time, I had some skills and some knowledge that I could teach them. And so I think we came to a very quick mutual understanding, them having understood and worked with other Americans in the special operations community. They understood that they could learn things from us, but they also understood that they could teach us things. And so it was kind of a synergistic relationship that we had with those guys, or that I had with them, because they would teach me things about the jungle, about the terrain, about the peoples, about the language, about cooking in the jungle and working with all the various things. They taught me how to live in the jungle. And I taught them some military things that were very helpful tactically and so on. The whole point behind Special Forces going to war or going into an area and working with indigenous forces, that's what it's all about. Learning how to live with the locals. So you go in and you figure out who's who in the area, who's the best and the brightest that you can work with. When we came to Vietnam, for the most part, it was the Montagnards, particularly in the central Highlands. They were the king of the walk. They owned the place because they knew it so well. It was their world. Just as when we went in and worked with people from the Northern Alliance, when we went into Peru and worked with folks there trying to counter the Sendero Luminoso, when we went into Central America and worked with people there and tried to support some of the anti-narcotics activities that went on. We learned who the locals were that knew the area, that knew the folks, and we went to work with them. And it's all about moving in and being partners with whoever you're working with, as opposed to moving in and taking over their society or being subservient to them. It's an equal partnership on equal footing, and it's a partnership based on mutual respect and understanding that we each have our own strengths, we each have our own weaknesses, and we will work together to make sure that we can get that job done. And that's what Special Forces is all about to me.